The small house sat on the edge of the town, quiet and weathered by years of sun and wind. Inside, a young girl moved carefully across the wooden floor, trying not to wake her mother who lay in the next room. Her mother had been sick for a long time, and some days it was hard for her to even speak. The girl had learned to take care of her quietly, bringing water, preparing small meals, and making sure she did everything she could to ease her pain. The morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, painting patterns on the walls. The girl sat by the small table and picked up a worn notebook filled with sheet music. Her fingers traced the notes gently, remembering the lessons her mother had taught her when she was even younger. Music had always been a special connection between them, a language that spoke when words could not. Even on the worst days, a simple melody could bring a small smile to her mother's face. The girl knew the doctor had said her mother needed expensive treatment. They had no money, and she had already asked for help from neighbors and friends, but most could only offer a little food or some kind words. The weight of worry rested heavily on her small shoulders, but she held on to hope, even when hope felt almost impossible. She believed that somehow, things would change, and she would find a way to save her mother. Outside, the town was slowly waking up. The streets were busy with people going to work, children running to school, and vendors setting up their stalls. The girl watched through the window, wishing she could be part of that world, if only for a little while. But her place was here, in the quiet house, taking care of the one person who mattered most to her. She picked up her violin, a gift from her mother before she had grown too weak to play herself. The wood was worn, the strings slightly frayed, but it still made a sound that could fill a room with warmth. She drew the bow across the strings, and a soft, trembling note filled the space. The sound made her mother stir slightly, opening her eyes and giving a faint smile. "Good morning," the girl whispered. Her mother tried to respond, but her voice was weak. The girl moved closer and held her hand gently. "I'll make today a good day, I promise," she said, though she did not know how she could do it. She only knew she had to try. After a while, she went to prepare breakfast. She found the small bit of bread they had left and some tea. She moved with careful steps so as not to spill anything, her mind already thinking about how she could find a way to help her mother. She thought about the upcoming town music gathering that people had been talking about for weeks. Some said it was just for fun, but she remembered stories of people who had been noticed and helped through their music. She wondered if maybe she could try. Felt like a far-off dream, but it was a dream worth holding on to. As she served the tea, her mother looked at her with eyes full of pride and love. Even when she was sick, she tried to offer encouragement. The girl sat down beside her, and for a moment, they just shared the quiet morning together. No words were needed. The comfort of being close to each other was enough. The girl felt a small spark of determination grow inside her. She would not let fear stop her. She would try for her mother, for the hope that still lived in their tiny home. The day moved slowly. She cleaned the house as best she could, washed the small pile of dishes, and looked through the notebook of music. She practiced some tunes, her fingers moving more confidently with each note. Sometimes she paused, closing her eyes and letting the music carry her thoughts. The sound of the violin filled the house, blending with the gentle morning breeze. She felt the presence of her mother beside her, even when she was too tired to join in. Neighbors came by, as they sometimes did, to check on the girl and her mother. They brought small gifts of food or tried to help in any way they could. The girl thanked them quietly, but she did not speak of her plan. She needed to be sure it was possible before sharing her hopes with anyone. She wanted her mother to feel proud without worrying that it might not work. By afternoon, the girl decided to leave the house for a little while. She walked slowly through the town, her violin case in hand. She watched other children play, and she noticed the families laughing together. She felt a pang of sadness, wishing her own life could be simpler, but she also felt a quiet strength. Music was her bridge to the world, and it was her tool to change her mother's fate. She arrived at the hall where the music gathering would be held. The room was buzzing with activity, people tuning instruments, chatting excitedly, and testing their voices. The girl felt nervous as she looked around, but she reminded herself why she was there. She took a deep breath, feeling the familiar comfort of her violin in her hands. She began to play a soft tune in the corner, almost unnoticed at first. The notes were simple, but they carried her heart, her worry, and her love. A few people stopped to listen, surprised by the emotion in her music. Some whispered to each other, curious about the young girl who played with such depth. She did not notice them. She only focused on the sound and the hope that each note could somehow reach beyond the walls of the hall, reaching someone who could help. Hours passed, and the girl continued to practice in the quiet moments, learning to control her nerves and finding strength in her music. As the sun began to set, painting the town with golden light, she returned home. Her mother was resting, and the girl felt a renewed sense of purpose. She prepared a small dinner and sat beside her, talking softly about her day and the music gathering. Her mother smiled faintly, proud of her daughter's courage. That night, before going to sleep, the girl sat by the window, looking at the stars. She whispered a promise to herself and her mother. She would do everything in her power to save her mother's life, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. Music had always been a part of their bond, and now it would be her guide. She closed her eyes, letting the melody linger in her mind, and drifted to sleep, ready for the challenges and opportunities that tomorrow might bring. The next morning, the girl woke with a mixture of nervousness and determination. She knew today would bring her closer to the music gathering, and she hoped that her small steps could lead to something bigger. She helped her mother get out of bed, preparing breakfast as quietly as possible. Her mother tried to speak, offering encouragement, but her voice was too weak. The girl simply smiled and squeezed her hand, letting her know that everything would be all right. After breakfast, the girl carefully packed her violin and notebook, checking once more that everything was ready. The town seemed brighter in the morning light, but her heart carried a heaviness she could not shake. She knew the path ahead was uncertain, but she also felt a fire inside her, a drive that came from love and necessity. She kissed her mother on the forehead and promised to be careful, hoping her courage would be enough to face the challenges waiting outside the small house. Walking through the streets, she felt the eyes of people around her. Some looked at her with curiosity, some with sympathy, but she kept her focus on the hall ahead. She had practiced the tunes over and over, and though her hands trembled with nerves, she reminded herself that this was for her mother. The thought of her mother's life, the possibility of saving her, gave her strength she did not know she had. As she entered the hall, the noise of instruments and chatter surrounded her. Musicians tuned their instruments, singers warmed their voices, and children ran about, excited and unafraid. The girl found a quiet corner, trying to remain unseen at first. She did not want to be judged or distracted. She took a deep breath and let her fingers touch the strings, producing a gentle note that hung in the air. It was soft, almost shy, but it carried her heart. Soon, a few people noticed her. They came closer, curious about the young girl with the worn violin. She felt their eyes on her, but she focused on the music. Each note told a story of worry, love, hope, and fear. She played as if the music itself could carry her message, reaching beyond the crowded hall. Some listeners whispered to each other, moved by the emotion in her performance, but the girl barely noticed. Her mind was only on the hope that someone, somewhere, would hear and understand. A man, one of the organizers, approached her gently. He asked if she would like to perform on stage. The girl hesitated, unsure of her ability to play in front of so many people. Her hands shook, and her voice caught when she tried to speak. But she thought of her mother, lying at home, needing help, and she realized that this was not about her fear. It was about love and survival. Taking a deep breath, she nodded. The man smiled and guided her toward the stage. The lights were bright, the audience waiting, and the girl felt her heart race like never before. She could hear murmurs of curiosity, people wondering what a small girl could do. She closed her eyes for a moment, recalling her mother's encouragement, and began to play. The first notes were tentative, soft, almost uncertain. But as she continued, her confidence grew. The music flowed from her heart, each note carrying the weight of her worry and the depth of her love. She glanced at the audience, seeing their attention turn to her. Some faces softened, some eyes glistened with emotion. The hall felt alive, but her focus never wavered from the one purpose she carried: helping her mother. The tune changed subtly, from quiet and fragile to strong and filled with passion. The audience leaned in, captivated by the young girl's ability to convey emotion with each sound. She felt a strange connection with everyone present, as if the music itself was bridging the gap between her small world and theirs. She no longer noticed the fear inside her. It was replaced by determination and the power of her own voice through the violin. Halfway through the performance, a few people whispered urgently to each other, recognizing the depth of feeling in her playing. The man on stage who had invited her watched closely, impressed by her natural talent and the honesty of her performance. He knew that her music was not just skill. It was a story, a message that could touch hearts and inspire action. The girl played on, unaware of the effect she was having, fully immersed in the melody, letting it carry her hopes and dreams. Meanwhile, back at home, her mother imagined the girl playing, her hands moving over the strings, her expression full of concentration and emotion. Even from afar, the mother felt the love and determination radiating from her daughter. She whispered a silent prayer, asking for help, for someone to see the courage and talent of the girl who had been her light in the darkest days. As the performance neared its end, the girl poured everything she had into the final notes. The music rose, swelled, and then softened, fading into a delicate silence. The hall was still for a moment, and then a wave of applause erupted. The girl looked up, startled, and saw the faces of people moved by her performance. Some were wiping tears, others were smiling in awe. She felt a strange warmth, a mix of relief and wonder, as if she had touched something beyond herself. The man who had guided her to the stage came forward, smiling proudly. He told her that she had a gift and that people noticed not just her music, but her heart. He asked her if she had someone she cared for deeply, someone she wanted to help, and she nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. He promised to do what he could to assist, and the girl felt hope blossom like a fragile flower, delicate yet strong. After leaving the stage, the girl returned to her corner, exhausted but exhilarated. She had faced her fear, played from her heart, and given everything she could. The crowd continued to talk about her, and she overheard whispers of admiration and curiosity. Some mentioned that they wanted to help the girl and her family, though she only listened quietly, too overwhelmed to speak. Her focus remained on the thought of her mother and the hope that something good might come from today. As she walked home through the evening streets, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink, she felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever. The town around her continued its rhythm, but she carried a new energy, a belief that her music had made a difference, even if she could not see it yet. She thought of the coming days, of the possibility that someone might step forward to help her mother, and she allowed herself a small smile. Back at home, she gently woke her mother, telling her about the gathering and the performance. Her mother listened with pride, though still too weak to express much more than a faint smile. The girl held her hand, feeling the quiet connection that had always guided them. She knew the real challenge was not over, but for the first time in a long while, she felt that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. That night, she practiced a few more notes, softly, letting the sound fill the room. She imagined her mother smiling, imagined the hope growing, and felt a renewed determination. She had stepped into a world bigger than her small home and had shared her heart in a way that mattered. The girl closed her eyes, the violin resting beside her, and let herself drift into sleep with the thought that tomorrow could bring the answers they so desperately needed. The day of the big performance had arrived. The hall was filled with people from all over the town, eager to hear music, to clap, to cheer, and to be entertained. Musicians tuned their instruments, singers adjusted their microphones, and children whispered excitedly to each other, clutching programs in their hands. The girl entered quietly, her violin case in one hand, feeling the familiar nervous flutter in her chest. Her hands shook slightly, but she held her chin high, determined to do her best. She found a quiet corner again, taking a few moments to breathe and gather her thoughts. The hall felt bigger today, louder, and filled with expectations. The girl reminded herself that she had a purpose far greater than fear. She thought of her mother waiting at home, of the hope that might come from this one chance. She touched the violin, feeling the smooth wood and the worn strings, and closed her eyes. The notes came to her mind naturally, and a calm determination replaced the jittery nerves. When it was her turn, a kind organizer led her to the stage. The bright lights made her squint at first, and she felt every eye in the hall upon her. Her heart beat fast, but she took a deep breath and positioned the violin under her chin. The silence that followed was heavy, expectant, as if the hall itself was holding its breath, waiting for the first note. She began slowly, letting her fingers find their place on the strings. The first notes were soft, almost fragile, trembling slightly under her uncertainty. But with every movement of the bow, she found strength. The music began to flow, gentle at first, then more confident, carrying every ounce of emotion she had inside. She played with her heart, letting the feelings of love, fear, and hope move through her fingers and into the air. The audience was quiet at first, curious, listening to the small girl who played with such focus. Then, as the tune developed, a wave of emotion passed through them. Eyes softened, heads tilted, and some people closed their eyes, letting the music touch them in ways words could not. The girl played as if the violin were a voice, telling the story of her life, of her mother's struggles, of the love that had never faltered despite hardship. A few musicians and attendees whispered to each other, noting how much feeling a child could convey. The man who had invited her onto the stage watched closely, impressed by the raw emotion she was expressing. She played not for fame, not for applause, but for the hope that someone might notice, someone might help. The audience began to feel the depth of her story without her needing to speak a word. Midway through the performance, the tune grew stronger. The soft notes became louder, the melody more complex, yet every note carried sincerity. Her hands moved swiftly, sometimes pausing on a note to let it linger, as if the sound itself could reach hearts and inspire action. A few people in the audience felt tears welling in their eyes, and some whispered quietly, amazed at the courage and talent of the young girl. She did not see them. Her focus remained on the music, on the hope that each note could somehow make a difference. The girl thought of her mother often as she played, imagining the faint smile that would appear on her face if she could see this moment. Every vibration of the strings was filled with love, the bond between mother and daughter stronger than ever, even across the distance of the small town. She poured her heart into each note, letting the music speak what she could not say aloud. As the performance continued, the hall seemed to transform. The usual chatter faded, replaced by silence and the pure sound of emotion carried through the music. People leaned forward in their seats, captivated, moved by the story unfolding through the melody. Even those who were skeptical at first could not ignore the honesty and feeling expressed in each bow stroke. The final part of the piece arrived. The girl played with everything she had, letting the music rise and swell with a sense of urgency and hope. The notes echoed through the hall, carrying the weight of her heart and her prayers for her mother. She felt exhausted, but also empowered. The music was no longer just notes and rhythm. It was a living expression of everything she had experienced, everything she hoped for. When the last note faded, there was a brief silence. The audience seemed suspended, as if trying to comprehend the intensity of what they had just heard. Then, slowly, applause began, growing louder and louder until the hall was filled with clapping, cheering, and some tears. The girl lowered her violin, her chest heaving, overwhelmed by relief and emotion. She had given everything, and the response was beyond anything she had imagined. The man who had invited her to perform came forward, smiling broadly, eyes glistening with pride. He spoke to the audience about the young girl's talent, her courage, and the story behind her music. He mentioned her mother's illness and the hope that her performance could help her in ways that money alone could not. People in the audience leaned in, touched by the story, their admiration deepening. A few members of the crowd approached her, offering words of encouragement and admiration. Some mentioned they knew someone who could help with medical needs. Others simply wanted to support her in any way they could. The girl listened quietly, overwhelmed but grateful, realizing that her music had opened doors she had never dreamed possible. After the applause subsided, she walked off the stage, her legs shaky but her spirit lifted. The hall seemed brighter somehow, filled with the warmth of human kindness and connection. She thought of her mother waiting at home, of the hope that this moment had brought, and felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her small actions, her courage to play, had touched more people than she could count. As she left the hall, some people followed, wanting to speak to her further, wanting to offer help and support. She smiled, shyly, feeling a mix of pride and humility. She realized that her life, and her mother's, might change because of this one performance. The thought filled her heart with both hope and responsibility. Walking through the streets toward home, the evening sky painted in soft shades of pink and orange, she felt a quiet joy that she had never known before. The town was still alive with activity, but her mind was focused on the possibility of what was to come. She imagined her mother recovering, imagined the smile that would light up her face, and let herself dream for the first time in a long while. Back at the small house, she gently woke her mother, telling her about the performance, the applause, and the people who had shown interest in helping. Her mother listened, eyes shining with pride and love, unable to speak fully, but feeling the strength of her daughter's heart through every word. The girl held her mother's hand, feeling the quiet bond that had carried them both through so much, and knew that together they could face whatever came next. That night, she sat with her violin, thinking over every moment of the day. The music, the audience, the reactions, and the encouragement had all made a mark on her heart. She practiced a few soft notes, letting the sound fill the room, letting it carry her gratitude, hope, and love. She felt ready for the challenges ahead, knowing that the courage she had shown today would guide her through tomorrow, and that the power of her music could change not just her life, but her mother's too. After the performance, the girl left the hall feeling a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and hope. She walked slowly through the streets, her violin case in her hand, thinking over every detail of the day. She replayed the music in her mind, the applause, and the kind words from the audience. But most of all, she thought about her mother, hoping that what she had done might lead to help. The evening air was cool, and the town lights reflected softly off the cobblestones, giving her a sense of calm despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. As she approached her small house, she noticed a few people standing outside. Curiosity and a little anxiety mixed in her chest. As she got closer, one of the visitors stepped forward and introduced themselves as a friend of the organizer from the music gathering. They had heard about the young girl with the violin and her extraordinary performance. Their eyes were kind, their voice gentle, and they asked if she had a few moments to speak with them. The girl nodded, a flutter of hope rising in her chest. They led her to a quiet spot near her home and explained that they had been moved by her music and the story behind it. They wanted to help her mother, offering financial assistance for the treatment that had been so urgently needed. The girl's heart leapt at the words. She could hardly believe it. After so many months of worry, fear, and helplessness, someone was offering real help. She listened carefully, trying to understand exactly what they were offering, and felt tears prick her eyes. She thanked them, her voice trembling with emotion, her mind racing with relief and gratitude. The girl rushed inside to her mother, careful not to drop her violin or upset the visitors who followed her. Her mother looked up, sensing that something important was happening. The girl held her mother's hand and spoke quickly, telling her that help was coming, that someone had heard her music and wanted to assist. Her mother's eyes widened, and though her voice was weak, a smile spread across her face. She tried to speak words of thanks, but her daughter simply held her close, feeling a sense of warmth and hope that they had not felt in a long time. The following days were a blur of activity. Arrangements were made for her mother's treatment, appointments were scheduled, and the girl stayed by her mother's side, helping her rest and preparing for the procedures ahead. She found comfort in her music, playing softly in the evenings, letting the sound fill the house and calm both their hearts. Every note seemed to carry gratitude and hope, a reminder of the courage and determination that had led them to this moment. Neighbors and friends who had known about their struggles came to offer support. Some brought meals, some offered to help with chores, and others simply came to sit with them, providing companionship and comfort. The girl realized that her music had not only touched strangers, but had also brought her community closer, highlighting the power of love, courage, and art to create change. She felt a sense of connection and belonging that she had never experienced before, and it strengthened her resolve to keep moving forward. As the day of her mother's treatment arrived, the girl stayed close, holding her hand and speaking softly to reassure her. She whispered encouraging words, reminded her mother of the love and support surrounding them, and promised that everything would be okay. Her mother smiled faintly, drawing strength from her daughter's presence and courage. The girl felt a surge of determination, knowing that this was the moment that all their struggles had led to. The treatment began, and the girl waited anxiously outside, pacing the small area near the hospital room. She clutched her violin, the familiar weight grounding her, and played soft, gentle tunes in her mind, imagining the music reaching her mother even through the walls. She thought about the audience from the music gathering, the kind stranger who had offered help, and the hope that had blossomed from her courage. Each note in her imagination was a prayer, a plea, and a celebration of love and resilience. Hours later, the treatment was complete. The doctor stepped out to speak with the girl and her mother, explaining that everything had gone well and that her mother would recover. The girl felt tears of relief and joy streaming down her face. She ran into her mother's arms, hugging her tightly, both of them crying silently, overwhelmed by the mixture of fear, relief, and gratitude. The bond between them felt stronger than ever, unbreakable and filled with love. Returning home, the girl continued to care for her mother, helping her regain strength and ensuring that she followed all the necessary steps for recovery. The house, once quiet and heavy with worry, now felt filled with hope and light. Music continued to play a vital role, soothing their hearts, bringing joy, and creating a sense of normalcy. The girl found a deeper connection to her instrument, understanding that it had not only been a tool for expression, but also a bridge to human kindness and support. Word of the girl's performance and the resulting help spread through the town. People spoke of the courage of the young girl, of the power of music to touch hearts, and of the importance of compassion. The girl felt a quiet pride, knowing that her actions had made a difference, not only in her own life but in inspiring others to be kind and generous. She realized that even the smallest acts, when guided by love and determination, could have profound effects. Days turned into weeks, and her mother grew stronger with each passing day. The girl continued her routine, helping, playing music, and supporting her mother with unwavering devotion. She reflected on the journey they had been through, the hardships, the fear, and the uncertainty, and marveled at how hope and courage had guided them through. Music had opened doors, touched hearts, and created a path to healing, and she cherished the realization that she had the power to change lives, starting with her mother. At night, they would sit together, the girl playing soft tunes on her violin, her mother listening with a peaceful smile. They talked quietly, sharing dreams, memories, and plans for the future. The girl felt a sense of accomplishment and joy, understanding that her music had been more than a performance. It had been a lifeline. The bond between them, strengthened through trials and love, became the foundation for their continued journey together. The girl also began to think about ways she could help others, inspired by the kindness they had received. She realized that her talent and courage could reach beyond her own life, touching the lives of others who needed hope, encouragement, and support. She envisioned sharing her music in different places, helping those who struggled, and creating connections through the language she knew best, the language of the heart. Life slowly returned to a more steady rhythm. Her mother's health improved, The worry that had filled the small house diminished, and the girl felt a sense of peace that had long been absent. Yet, she remained mindful of the journey they had endured, remembering the days of fear, the nights of uncertainty, and the moments when hope seemed distant. She understood the value of perseverance, the power of love, and the impact that a single act of courage could have on the course of a life. The girl continued to practice daily, refining her skill and nurturing her gift, knowing that it had already brought about a miraculous change. Music had transformed from a simple pastime into a force that connected hearts, inspired action, and created possibilities. She felt grateful for every note, every performance, and every moment that had led to the recovery and hope they now shared. As the sun set each evening, painting the sky with warm colors, the girl and her mother would sit by the window, the violin resting beside her. They would talk softly, share a smile, and feel the comfort of knowing that they had faced life's challenges together and come through stronger. The journey had been long and difficult, but it had also revealed the resilience, love, and hope that could flourish even in the darkest times. They knew that together, they could face whatever the future held, guided by music, courage, and the unbreakable bond between them. The days after her mother's recovery were filled with a calm happiness that the girl had never known before. Their home, once heavy with worry and silence, now echoed with soft music, laughter, and quiet conversations. The girl played her violin daily, not just for practice, but to bring comfort and joy to herself and her mother. Each note felt like a small celebration of their journey, of the courage that had brought them through so much. She understood now, more than ever, that music was not just a skill. It was a bridge, a language of love and hope. Her mother's health continued to improve steadily. The fear that had once loomed over their small home slowly faded, replaced by a sense of security and gratitude. She could now move about the house more easily, help with small tasks, and smile without pain or exhaustion. Watching her mother regain strength filled the girl with immense joy, and she found herself singing softly along with her violin, creating melodies that spoke of relief, love, and dreams for the future. The town around them began to notice the girl's determination and the extraordinary role her music had played. Neighbors who had once offered small acts of kindness now spoke with admiration about her courage. Some visited often, bringing small gifts, helping with chores, or simply sitting quietly to enjoy the music. The girl realized that her courage and talent had not only changed her life but had also inspired others, spreading hope and kindness through the community. One afternoon, the girl was invited to perform at a small event in the town square. The organizer from the music gathering had asked her to share her music again, this time to inspire others. She felt a mixture of nerves and excitement, remembering how it had felt the first time she played in front of an audience. Yet, she knew now that it was not just about the performance. It was about connection, about sharing emotion, about showing others that hope and courage could make a real difference. When the day of the event arrived, the town square was bustling with people. Children ran about, vendors sold small treats, and the air was filled with anticipation. The girl stepped onto the small stage, feeling the familiar weight of her violin in her hands. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting her thoughts settle on her mother and the journey that had brought them here. The first notes were soft and careful, but soon her confidence grew, and the melody filled the square with warmth. As she played, people stopped and listened. Some smiled, some wiped tears from their eyes, and many leaned in closer to hear the music that carried so much feeling. The girl's hands moved gracefully over the strings, each note telling a story of love, courage, and hope. She remembered the fear she had once felt, the uncertainty of not knowing if help would come, and she let the music speak for her heart. The crowd, moved by the performance, felt the power of her journey and the connection she shared with those she loved. After the performance, the girl returned home, her heart full of satisfaction and joy. She knew that her music had touched lives once more, that her courage had inspired others, and that she had grown stronger because of it. She shared the experience with her mother, who listened with pride, her eyes shining with tears and a gentle smile. The bond between them, strengthened by hardship and love, had become the foundation of a life filled with hope and purpose. The girl also began to think about the future. She wanted to continue using her music to help others, to reach those who struggled or felt alone. She dreamed of performing in more places, sharing her story and her melodies, and showing that even the smallest acts of courage and love could have profound effects. Her music had already saved her mother's life. She now understood that it could continue to touch hearts, create opportunities, and inspire change. Evenings were spent in quiet reflection, with the girl practicing softly while her mother rested nearby. The house was peaceful, filled with the gentle sound of the violin and the warmth of family. They spoke of dreams, shared memories, and planned for the days ahead. The girl felt a deep sense of gratitude for the people who had helped, for the audience that had listened, and for the strength that had guided her through the darkest times. Life slowly settled into a steady rhythm. The girl continued to care for her mother, to play music, and to dream of ways to help others. She understood that their journey had taught her lessons of resilience, compassion, and hope that could not be learned from books or lessons alone. The challenges they had faced had revealed the strength of their bond and the power of courage, showing that even in the hardest moments, love could guide and sustain them. The town began to recognize the girl as someone special, not just for her talent, but for her bravery and determination. People spoke of her story, and she became a quiet inspiration, showing that even a young girl could make a difference when guided by heart and courage. She continued to perform at small events, sharing her music and her story, connecting with people through the universal language of emotion and hope. Over time, her mother regained full strength. She could walk without assistance, move freely around the home, and participate in small community events. Watching her mother thrive brought indescribable happiness to the girl. The days of worry, sleepless nights, and constant fear had given way to a life filled with laughter, music, and the comforting presence of loved ones. They had faced adversity together and emerged stronger, their bond unshakable and filled with love. The girl never forgot the moment when her music had opened doors, when strangers had stepped forward to help, and when hope had returned to their lives. She cherished every note she played, knowing that music had been the bridge that carried her through hardship. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It was the courage to act, the love that fueled her determination, and the willingness to reach beyond fear that had made the real difference. Nights were often spent with her violin resting on her lap, her fingers moving over the strings as she played soft, gentle melodies. Her mother listened nearby, smiling, occasionally humming along, sharing in the simple joy that music brought. Each note was a reminder of their journey, of the fear they had faced, and the hope that had never left them. The girl felt a profound connection to the world through her music, understanding that it could comfort, inspire, and bring people together. The girl's life continued to unfold with quiet happiness and purpose. She remained devoted to her mother, her music, and the community that had supported them. She knew that challenges would come again, as they always did, but she also knew that courage, love, and hope could guide her through anything. Her music had already changed lives, and she was determined to continue sharing it, knowing that even the smallest acts could have a ripple effect, spreading kindness and inspiration far beyond what she could see. In the years that followed, the girl grew into a young woman who carried her experiences, her love for her mother, and her gift for music with pride. She never forgot the power of a single performance, the impact of genuine emotion, and the importance of reaching out to others with courage and compassion. Her mother remained healthy and happy, their bond as strong as ever, and their home filled with laughter, music, and hope. Through it all, the girl understood that life's challenges were not just obstacles, but opportunities to show courage, love, and determination. She had learned that music was more than sound. It was a language of the heart, a bridge to understanding, and a source of hope. And she knew that as long as she played, she could continue to touch lives, inspire change, and share the love and courage that had carried her through the darkest days of her life.